Good afternoon. Welcome to Preservation Connecticut Spring 2025 series, talking about preservation, our noontime chats about everything preservation. I'm Jane Montanaro, Executive Director of Preservation Connecticut, and I'm pleased to be your host. Today, we are chatting with staff from Connecticut Landmarks about history moving forward, and the staff members joining us are Olivia Grella, Eileen Bastos, and Lynn Mervash. This program is generously sponsored by Fascination, Architectural Preservation Studios, and Colonial Restorations. I'd like to begin the program by sharing with you information about Preservation Connecticut. Preservation Connecticut is the statewide private nonprofit historic preservation organization founded in 1975 by a special act of the Connecticut General Assembly as the Connecticut Trust for Historic Preservation, to preserve, protect, and promote the buildings, sites, and landscapes that contribute to the heritage and vitality of Connecticut's communities. We are statutory partners with the Connecticut State Historic Preservation Office, and I'm proud to say that for 50 years, we have successfully championed the protection of remarkable community assets all over the state by leveraging funding, advocating, forming partnerships, and promoting stewardship. Sorry, I advanced my slide too soon. Our office shown here is located in the Eli Whitney Boarding House on Whitney Avenue in Hamden. It's listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and it's the only surviving residential structure of the industrial village that's centered on Eli Whitney's armory, and it's served as Preservation Connecticut's headquarters since 1989. We have a staff of 10 preservation professionals and a board of 21 preservationists around the state. Staff listed here are always available to assist with inquiries. Contact Christopher Wiegren, our Deputy Director, for information on historic preservation easements, our bi-monthly magazine, Connecticut Preservation News, our Olmsted and Connecticut Landscape Survey, and to arrange book talks for his book, Connecticut Architecture, Stories of 100 Places. Renee Tribert is our Making Places and Preservation Services Manager. Please contact Renee for information on redevelopment of historic industrial sites and tax credit applications. Jordan Sorensen is our Development and Special Projects Manager. Jordan manages our communications and outreach to members through social media and email, receives and monitors demolition notices from municipalities, and prepares historic tax credit applications and nominations to the State and National Register of Historic Places. Kristen Hopewood, our Membership and Outreach Manager, manages all of the inquiries that come through our website, provides member services, arranges special events, and is editor of our Historic Properties Exchange, a free listing of threatened historic properties. And finally, our team of circuit riders. Mike Farino is the Field Services Director. Brad Scheid, Stacy Vero, Stefan Danchuk, and Andrea Florsheimer, our Circuit Rider Fellow. Circuit Riders provide immediate boots-on-the-ground services to homeowners, developers, municipal leaders, nonprofit organizations and museums, historic district commissions, and much, much more, with an array of preservation technical assistance, including community organizing, prioritizing maintenance and repairs, historic designations, funding, and archaeology. These preservation chats have become an important and enjoyable tool for us to meet our mission. We're able to connect with the public and hear what's on your mind. Please feel free to use the chat feature during the discussion, ask questions at the end, or of course, contact us afterwards for a site visit or further information. In a preview for next week, we're going to do a 50th anniversary chat and talk about 50 years of preserving Connecticut's historic resources and a bit of reminiscing about Preservation Connecticut's 5 decades of work. So I hope you can join us for that. And now I'm going to stop sharing and invite Olivia to share her screen and take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. Bear with me one second. I will share my screen and then we can get started. And please let me know if there's any issues with what I am sharing. Pull up the slideshow. Okay, can everybody see that all right?
Yes. Looks
Perfect.
good.
Great. All right. Hello, my name is Olivia Grella. I am the Marketing and Communications Manager here at Connecticut Landmarks, and I'm joined today by Eileen and Lynn. Eileen is our Preservation Manager here at Connecticut Landmarks, and Lynn is our Site Administrator for the North Central region, which encompasses the Butler McCook House and Garden in Hartford, as well as the Isham Terry House in Hartford and the Phelps-Hatheway House and Garden in Suffield. So we're super excited to be here today to talk a little bit about the preservation projects going on across multiple of our sites, as well as the 18th century Persian wallpaper conservation project that is wrapping up at the Phelps-Hatheway House and Garden. And before we get started, I just wanted to thank Preservation Connecticut for the opportunity to speak with you all today. As you'll hear more about from Eileen and Lynn, Preservation Connecticut has really been a crucial part of the preservation work that we do at our historic house museums across the state, which really directly impacts our ability to share the stories of our properties and create the experiences that we do across our sites. So we truly appreciate their support and their guidance over many, many years. So with that, let us get started. Before we dive into things, I wanted to give a quick summary of what we have in store for this discussion. I will begin with a quick overview of Connecticut landmarks for those who may not know who we are. And then Eileen will follow with a discussion of the preservation projects currently underway across various of our sites. And we will end with Lynn with an exploration of the 18th century Réveillon wallpaper conservation project happening at the Phelps-Hatheway House and Garden. And then we'll open it up for question and answer at the end. There we go. So who is Connecticut Landmarks? So Connecticut Landmarks, we were founded in 1936 as the Antiquarian and Landmark Society, and we have really become one of the leading historical organizations in the state. We are a nonprofit organization that owns and operates a statewide network of 11 different historical properties that span 4 centuries of New England history from the colonial period up until the 21st century. 9 of our properties are operated as museums with open tour hours and public programs and field trip visits. And then our other 4 stewardship properties support our mission by providing research opportunities such as at the Amasa Day House, rental income, historic preservation training, and then an office space, such as our Amos Bull House in Hartford, which you'll see a picture of, that serves as Connecticut Landmarks headquarters. So here is an overview of all of the properties that we steward. I really like this image because I think it puts into context just how many properties we take care of. So starting in the top left-hand corner, just to go through, we have the Amasa Day House in Moodus, the Amos Bull House, which is located in Hartford, that's our headquarters, the Bellamy Faraday House and Garden in Bethlehem, the Butoff Williams House in Weathersfield, the Butler McCook House and Garden, starting in that second row, is in Hartford. Forge Farm is located in Stonington. And then we have the Hempstead houses in New London. Those are those 2 last images here. And then in the final row, we have the Isham Terry House in Hartford, the Nathan Hale Homestead in Coventry, the Palmer Warner House in East Haddam, and then the Phelps-Hatheway House and Garden in Suffield. So again, I really like this image because I think what not a lot of people may know is that in addition to the historic house museums or the historic houses, we also care for structures on the properties, including barns and sheds and playhouses and fences and pit houses and carriage houses and the landscapes themselves, such as the historic gardens. 3 of our properties have historic gardens, the Bellamy Faraday House, Butler McCook, and then the Phelps-Hatheway. They're all stunning. And actually, this Sunday, June 22nd, is Historic Gardens Day. So if you wanted to visit, 3 of our properties will have free admission to the historic gardens, in addition to the total of 16 historic gardens across the state. So that's a great opportunity to come and visit and check out the gardens, which are beautiful at the moment. So if you're wondering what properties you can visit, these are the list. This is the list of all of the properties that are open as historic house museums. The Butoff Williams House in Wethersfield is operated in partnership with the Webb Dean Stevens Museum. The rest of them are operated directly through us. So I have the QR code if you wanted to check out our website to view each property's open hours, and information about visitation and admission and all of that good stuff. Connecticut Landmarks is a member of the International Coalition of the Sites of Conscience, which is a global network of historic sites, museums, and memory initiatives connecting past struggles to today's movements for human rights and social justice. So at our historic house museums, visitors will engage in conversations about LGBTQ+ history and activism at the Palmer Warner House, for example, legacies of Northern slavery at the Hempstead houses, Indigenous people's lands rights at the Phelps-Hatheway House, human rights movements at the Bellamy Faraday House, and then impacts of urban renewal at Isham Terry, as well as patriotism and service at the Nathan Hale Homestead, all through the history of the people who lived at the properties. So before we switch over to Eileen, I just wanted to end with a little image of some of the events that we do at our historic house museums. Connecticut Landmarks really operates at the intersection of historic preservation and education and community engagement, to tell the story of the life in Connecticut from, like I said, the colonial era up until through today. And we do this is really apparent through our house tours, but also through our public programs, including educational walking tours, lectures, in-person or virtual programs, the field trips, and we also do community events, including the farmers market at the Nathan Hale Homestead, Revolutionary War encampments with local reenactors, musical and theater performances at the Isham Terry House. And we also offer hands-on workshops with local tradespeople, as well as educational demonstrations, featuring the expertise of local scholars and specialists. So this is just a small sampling of some of the events that we've held. Our Juneteenth celebration at the Hempstead houses, our Pride Month celebration at the Palmer Warner House, some lectures discussing the wallpaper conservation project at the Phelps-Hatheway House, author events, musical performances and concerts, and then garden events. We really have such a wide variety of events available for any interest. So I highly encourage you to check out our event calendar for the remainder of the events that we have going on for the season. But like I said at the beginning, the experiences that we create on our properties really wouldn't be possible without the structures that we steward. So from here, I will turn it over to Eileen, our preservation manager, who will dive into some of the current preservation projects that we have going on our sites. And excuse us while we switch seats. So one moment.
I promise we're not poor. We just like each other so much that we all wanted to be together in the same room. Thank you so much. As Olivia said, we've got a lot of properties and even more structures when you're talking about barns, visitor centers, and other small outbuildings. I'm going to talk about some of the projects we're currently working on or have completed recently, starting with the Bellamy Faraday House and Garden out in Bethlehem. The Bellamy Faraday House was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1982. The house was built circa 1760 by Reverend Joseph Bellamy and is significant in the area of architecture, education, and religion. We've been really busy over the last year taking care of this property. The shutters have been a source of contention for a long time. They were in various states of disrepair and had been rehung incorrectly after the house was repainted a few years ago. Some were hung upside down, and some had just matching pairs separated. After speaking with a restoration specialist who said his company would be unwilling to undertake such a huge project, we saw an article in Webdean Stevens' newsletter that they had reshuttered their property in partnership with Fresh Start Pallet Products, now Fresh Start Works, a Hartford-based nonprofit that rebuilds lives through education and employment. Their crafts program was the perfect fit for our shutter needs at Bellamy Faraday as well. Using a grant from the BNY Mellon Faraday Fund, we were able to have Fresh Start fabricate the new shutters for us. You can see the shutters packaged at the shop, then waiting in the Bellamy Faraday kitchen. And then Fink & Son Restoration, Historic Restoration hung the shutters with new hardware this spring, and there is the house with the new shutters installed. Like I said, we have a lot of projects here. Last year's Faraday Fund project was the gray brick paver driveway apron installed by Ironwood Landscaping. For many years, whenever a huge rainstorm passed through, the driveway gravel would wash onto Main Street and create large gullies in the driveway. The new apron not only looks beautiful, but also solved a major issue for the staff. They don't have to go out there onto a very busy road and shovel gravel back into our driveway. This year's Faraday Fund request is for the restoration of the historic garden. Established in 1915 by Eliza Faraday and later nurtured by her daughter Caroline, this garden is more than just a collection of plants. It's a living narrative that encapsulates the passion, artistry, and dedication of two remarkable women. Preserving such a garden is essential not only for historical education, but also for fostering environmental stewardship and enhancing community well-being. The Bellamy Faraday Garden serves as a vital historical archive, offering insight into early 20th century horticultural practices and aesthetic values. The formal parterre garden, with its meticulously designed layout, reflects the design principles and plant selections popularized during that time. By maintaining this garden, we ensure that future generations can experience and learn from historical significance that this embodies. The final project currently in progress at the Bellamy Faraday House is the restoration of Caroline's balcony. This balcony is accessed through Caroline Faraday's bedroom, and it was unfortunately struck by a limb from a large sugar maple tree, causing extensive damage. The tree was actually removed from the property this spring, but the damage it left is still there. Water infiltration has caused significant rot and deterioration. And because this project is being funded with a state bond administered through the Department of Economic and Community Development, the process from identifying the project to construction completion is slow and requires a lot of oversight from DECD, the State Historic Preservation Office, and the Department of Labor. Moving on to the Butler McCook House and Garden, which was built in 1782 and is the oldest remaining house in Hartford. This house is listed on the National Register in 1971 for its landscape architecture. Like Bellamy Faraday, it's also one of Connecticut's historic state gardens, like Olivia had mentioned. And it's also listed for social humanitarian reasons because of the work done by Francis McCook, who is the last owner of the house. Recently, we've used a Connecticut Neighborhood Assistance Act grant to restore a number of windows in the house. In New London, we have the Joshua and Nathaniel Hempstead houses. The Joshua Hempstead house is a circa 1678 frame house added to the National Register in 1970 and is significant for its architecture, as well as the social history provided by the Hempstead Diary. The Nathaniel Hempstead house, also known locally as the Huguenot House, was also added in 1970 for traditional Huguenot workers who were thought to temporarily reside in New London, as well as its architecture. I think that's since been debunked, though. The Joshua Hempstead house dates to circa 1759 and is made of stone. Last year, Fink & Son repaired the garret window, and J.P. Vachon Contracting provided masonry repairs to the chimney at the Joshua Hempstead house. Both projects sealed gaps, preventing future water damage. The major project here, though, is structural stabilization. We used Preservation Connecticut's TAC program to get a structural engineer in to take a look at the issues. We had DeStefano and Chamberlain who were absolutely amazing, did a very thorough job of evaluating the structure, and we have a laundry list of things that need to be dealt with. The biggest concern is the 2 large support beams that have sagged more than 3 inches, which apparently is a lot. The floor above them shakes when you walk on it, which obviously isn't safe. And on top of that, those beams were too shallow to begin with and have since been damaged by termites and powder post beetles. There's also a broken beam upstairs in the parlor chamber that needs extra support, and the original floor joists in the 1678 hall are in rough shape from insect damage as well. Some of the roof rafters are decayed or not properly supported, and there's mold in the attic from all the moisture coming up from the crawl space. Basically, the house is damp, which is attracting insects and causing wood to rot. Fixing the moisture problem by sealing the crawl space, adding heat and dehumidification, and improving drainage is just as important as reinforcing the structure itself. We're working with Kroski Architects, DiStefano and Chamberlain, and Cronenberger and Sons Restoration for selective demolition, structural reinforcement, and interior construction, as well as some associated site work. The scope is guided by preservation principles, emphasizing minimal disturbance and the use of traditional materials and techniques. And the product is another DECD state bonding project, so it's governed by a comprehensive set of specifications, drawings, and contract documents, ensuring adherence to quality, safety, and historic preservation standards. The Isham Terry House in Hartford was added to the National Register in 1982. This circa 1854 Italianate house was listed for its architecture. The story of this house, including how the Isham sisters fought eminent domain and one causing the bend in I-84, will require its own webinar. So what's happening at the Isham Terry house is a pretty focused roof repair project, mainly on 2 sections of the roof. The project is another DECD state bonding project headed by Cirrus Structural Engineering and FJ Dayhill Company. The team will be replacing the old roofing materials, fixing up any damaged wood underneath, and making sure everything is watertight. They're also doing some careful masonry work on the chimneys, repointing bricks, replacing damaged ones, and cleaning up everything so that it looks brand new. Since this is a historic house, everything is being done with preservation in mind, following national standards. They're even repainting the cornices and brackets around the roof and adding bird screens where needed. They're being extra cautious about hazardous materials like lead paint and asbestos, and those are being safely removed as part of the job. Arguably, our most popular site is the Nathan Hale Homestead. It was built in 1776 and added to the National Register in 1970. Nathan Hale himself never actually lived in this house, as his family built it while he was in the Revolutionary War. The homestead in Coventry is getting some much needed attention this year thanks to congressionally directed spending, which is federal money, as well as one of the DECD state bonds that we have. Our biggest gripes here are water infiltration at the windows, and there are multiple shades of red on the house currently. Anytime something gets replaced, a new shade of red gets slapped on, and it's a little patchworky at the moment. This project is all about repairing and refreshing the historic property. The work includes updates to the main house, everything from roof repairs to exterior elevations and door and window details. It's a thoughtful preservation effort led by Kroski Architects in anticipation of the semi-quincentennial next year. And I got that word right. Yes. The Palmer Warner House is our most recent acquisition house. It was added to the National Register in 1986 for its architecture, but the story of its final inhabitants, Frederick Palmer and Howard Metzger, is what makes this house really special to us. Palmer was a historic architect, and he was on the board of Connecticut Landmarks and provided restoration guidance for many of the properties that we own. And like the story of the Isham sisters, that could be its own webinar topic. Palmer purchased the Warner House and spent a lot of time returning it to the more rustic aesthetic he thought it would have originally looked like. Much like at the Hale Homestead, some of the old clapboards are in poor condition, the windows need to be restored, and a DECD state bond is being used for the restoration project. So there are a lot of hoops that we have to jump through. Last fall, we had a lintel fall off the house, and Fink & Son repaired it for us, which is the pictures on the right. Although we have major projects in progress at a bunch of our sites, the majority of preservation work we do is small things on an as-needed basis. And another large-scale project that we're working on at the Palmer Warner House involves the barn. Using yet another DECD administered bond, we're going to be converting the barn into a state-of-the-art visitor center, gallery space, and office, or at least that's the plan eventually. Right now, we have funding for site improvement work, including parking as well as restrooms in the barn, which are a pretty important feature. And hopefully we'll be able to fund the rest of the project in the future. The final house on our little preservation tour is the Phelps-Hatheway House in Suffield, which was added to the National Register in 1975. It was built in 1761 and is significant for its architecture, story of settlement, and the amazing French wallpaper that Lynn will talk about in just a minute. We've had a few recent projects at the site, including partial restoration of the fence by Cronenberger and Sons that was funded by an ARPA grant, the Coburn Foundation, and a 1772 foundation grant from Preservation Connecticut. We've got a lot of work to do on the fence still, one picket at a time, but slowly but surely we will get there. Last summer, Fink and Son fabricated new coins to match existing ones that had extensive rot and water damage. Little projects like this are funded by our annual restoration budget. And additionally, we are spending our DCD state bonds money that we need to allocate to the Phelps-Hatheway House on our pine room porch. Last year, we'd planned on an easy swap out of an old deteriorated post for a new one fabricated by Fink and Son. In the process, we discovered that not only was the post rotten, but so was a vast majority of the decking. Investigation turned into demolition, which we had to stop progress on and seek proper approvals from SHPO and DECD prior to continuing. Because of this, the basement was left exposed during some of the colder months and pipes froze. We've temporarily just covered the area so that we wouldn't have any more damage. And we just received SHPO's approval to proceed yesterday on this project. The plan is to replace some deteriorated wood decking and posts with new materials that match the original. And we will also be reinforcing the existing framing and addressing a couple of old brick piers that have started to break down. It's careful restoration to make sure the deck is safe and sturdy while we are keeping the historical character intact. And the last major project that we're working on is our wallpaper conservation project. So take it away, Lynn.
Hi, everyone. It's really exciting for me, at least, to sit and listen to my colleagues, Olivia and Eileen, speak about what's going on. Sometimes we lose track of, we're so busy that it's really lovely to hear of all the results. And thank you so much, Preservation Connecticut, for your unending guidance and support. We really appreciate it, and congratulations on the community investment funding and your 50th anniversary year. As Eileen mentioned, the Phelps-Hatheway House in Suffield has a significant importance for a few different reasons. All of our houses do, but I'll speak on this one in particular. Here you see the campus with the main house in the center there. That's the Burbank section, 1761 Central Chimney Colonial. And just slightly to the back of that is the Phelps Edition, 1794-95. Although set back slightly from the Burbank house, the Phelps Edition plays by no means a humble second fiddle. Phelps made alterations to the Burbank houses you might be able to see with the gable roof and the coins, as Eileen mentioned, and the dentils. Kept these additions and changes to a minimum, and the portico actually also. as we have notes saying that he wanted to keep the idea of balance and simplicity and symmetry in mind. And we're going to see that that's a really important going forward point for Phelps, and of course for the beginning of federal style architecture, the new nation's favorite style. And here he is, the dapper Oliver Phelps. This painting was done posthumously. He was the youngest of 17 children from the Pequonnock section of Windsor. Father died when Oliver was very young, and his mother indentured him out to a merchant in Suffield. And it's here that Phelps learned his savvy business skills. He was deputy commissary under Washington during the Revolutionary War period and profited handsomely off of the war. He set his sights on becoming a land speculator in the newly opened Connecticut Western Reserve. We do believe that the possible main inspiration for creating the Phelps edition by Oliver Phelps was to make it a showcase for prospective clients. And Phelps, if it were Phelps or an agent involved, had a grand vision of attracting a new sort of identity for the nation and capitalizing that in the Connecticut Western Reserve, here specifically in about 2 million acres surrounding the Finger Lake region of New York State. The addition to the Burbank house, we believe, Phelps had wanted to entice the youngest and trendiest and most sophisticated artisans he could find. Here we see the beautifully executed Asher Benjamin door. You may be familiar with Asher Benjamin, but the Phelps entry was Benjamin's first professional commission at the age of 21. For this young carpenter from Hartland, Connecticut, the job signaled the beginning of his career, not only as a builder, but also in the new field of architecture, as well as a published author. You may be familiar with The Country Builder's Assistant that was published in 1797 when Benjamin was 23. And this pocket guide enabled more rural builders to recreate the stunning designs that were going up very quickly in cities such as Boston. Benjamin went on to write other volumes, and he did do some work, some carpentry and architectural work along the Connecticut River Valley, and as well as in Boston. As I mentioned, either working through an agent or his vision on his own, Phelps gathered many artisans for this grand edition, including, as you see here, he hired through Conklin and Lloyd someone to design wallpaper and paid fairly handsomely for $234 at the time for 4 rooms of wallpaper. The 5th room was purchased later. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But this was going to be coming from France. And here is the second star of our show. Jean-Baptiste Réveillon of Paris was not only a brilliant chemist who specialized in creating high-quality papers and paints for his luxury wallpapers, but he also was a very savvy businessman and a politician. His clients were the first and second estates, that is the clergy and nobility of France at that time, who flocked to his design showrooms for the trendiest hand-stamped papers they could find. Marie Antoinette was a favorite. Réveillon workers began the process by creating wooden molds that they carved. And each wooden block was designated for a particular design as well as a particular color. So for example, in our hallway paper in Suffield, you have up to 24 different blocks that were used for one motif. So this is a very tedious process. Here we see a few of original blocks. Here also on the left, these are blocks held by Adelphi wallpaper hangings in New York State, and some reproduction blocks that we have currently on view at Phelps-Hatheway. This delightful illustration shows the process. Remember that wallpaper was not purchased in rolls until 1850. So small sections of paper, first one had to create the paper, and then small sections were adhered together on larger sections of paper, and then stamped, and then shipped. So these orders took quite a considerable amount of time. And of course, hung. Not only was Réveillon interested in creating outstanding wallpapers, but he, as I mentioned, was also very keen on establishing his presence in society. He partnered with the Montgolfier brothers to create the first hot air balloon. And you'll see here now whether or not this is true is up to everyone, but beautifully papered balloons that accompanied the first three animals on the first flight, and the first manned air flight in 1783. I wish I were there. Over the years, we have been concerned with the condition of the papers. Remember, we have 4 rooms of original paper. One is a reproduction. I'll tell you about that in a bit. But we had been seeing certain signs of damage over the years. And in 2021, we took the big step to have the papers assessed by John Canning. And we decided that we were going to really commit to having the papers looked at and properly managed. And we did this by applying for a Save America's Treasures grant in 2023, which we received. And what a tremendous gift it has been. For the stabilization of the papers, remember too that the reversal of the papers to their original look is not at all possible at this time. So our goal was to really make sure that going forward, the decline of the papers could be as minimal as possible. We hired the conservation firm of Studio TKM Associates of Somerville, Massachusetts. Lead conservators Deborah LaCamera and Lorraine Bigrig, seen here, are absolute rock stars, as well as their conservation interns who have been so informative and delightful to work with, coming every single Thursday from last June through now, except for a few weeks off. But I'll tell you, through rain and snow and cold and no water and heat, everything, they're there. Here's what they have done so far. First, they documented each room, took extensive color and paper analyses, and conducted research on the histories of the manufacturer. Here you see an up-close view of the paper content, literally rag paper content. Here, Deborah and color scientist Elaine Misak from Harvard are seen using an XRF technique to study the materials used for the paints. At that time in 1780s into early 90s, no synthetic pigments were produced. So most of the colors came from animal, vegetable, and minerals. Using UV light shows us that many of the colors are fugitive, and that means that they're no longer visible to the naked eye. You see here on the left the pink, as well as you can see the delineation of the different paper segments on the right-hand side. It also exposed really stunning decorative elements that again have disappeared from us. including this really neat zephyr and the stars that are located on the hallway paper. Then began the actual conservation process. On the right, you see conservators Haney and Eleanor taking extensive photography, which we had not had done before. So this is really vital for the research going forward. And then you're going to see on the left, both of them painstakingly vacuuming and brushing every inch of the paper. They have completed 3 rooms, and now they're going on the second floor of the hallway. And then the final room, which is probably going to be one of the most difficult, is the master bedroom. Borders have a very unique place in this process. As borders are removed, of course, we see the pristine original wallpaper underneath. And you can see a couple of different examples here of a really neat thing that we found in this project thus far, was that the background paper, in keeping with if you've seen examples of Pompeian rooms or rooms from Herculaneum, there's some at the Met. The background of our papers too, based on Roman culture and how important that was, is a really lovely light blue. And this, when the borders are removed, you can see has changed. This slide here shows a segment from the Musée du Pain in France of our hallway paper. You can see that the original was certainly done in a light blue background. So you may be asking, what actually happened to the light blue? Oh, and here's an image of paper coming off that has been successfully re-adhered to the original. So somewhere in the history of the paper, the background of 3 of the rooms was repainted white. Must have been a very long and tedious process. We're not quite sure why. Perhaps the light blue background had faded, but the X-ray shows here on the left-hand side the existence of overpaint. And this was done in 3 very large sections of the house. So threats to the paper include mold and water damage, which is significant in this weather, dirt, fading of the colors, and loss due to flaking. And finally, also pest damage. Here you see on the right, on a hallway paper, some evidence of silverfish, which is not a fish, as you may know, but an insect that loves to nibble on paper. And Deborah, as you see on the left-hand side, has honed down the surface of the paper. A smoother finish will deter other fish from nibbling, and it gives it a more unified look. And what's essential that conservators have taught me is a lot of this work that's being done is not necessarily to bring the paper back to its original view, but to give a visitor a more intact and pleasant experience when viewing the paper. Normally our eyes go directly toward the mistakes, and in this way, the conservation efforts give it a very intact and cohesive experience. Here is an image of the dining room paper, which is no longer in Suffield. As many of you know, it was whisked away, not really whisked, but taken away, taken down and moved to the Winterthur Museum of Historical Interiors in Wilmington, Delaware. Henry DuPont and Charles Montgomery recognized the significance of the paper and bought the room in the late 1950s after our last owner had left. Here's the room today in Delaware. I go every year. It's one of the highlights of my year, and you can see the room. It is now off view, but with advance notice, it can be taken in. Here is a lovely collage that conservator Haney did for the 4 papers that are still in situ in Suffield. We have reason to believe that we're probably the largest collection of 18th century wallpaper still hanging in the country, if not maybe in the world. And we are really delighted that this project has come to fruition. We will be going on until the end of December, and we hope you'll join us at some point to see the papers in person. We have open tour days as well as a printmaking workshop with Conservator Haney in October, and our final celebration will be November 2nd. So I will turn it back to Olivia, and thank you so much again, and I wish you a pleasant summer.
Amazing. Thank you so much to Lynn and Eileen for those amazing talks. I always love hearing about the wallpaper, especially it's so interesting and so fascinating. But that is it for our presentation. Thank you so much for listening. Before we open it up for questions, I just wanted to plug, if you're interested in learning more about our historic house museums, about our programs and our memberships, feel free to visit our website, ctlandmarks.org. We also have a preservation blog where you can keep up to date with our preservation projects. Or if you want to stay in the know about all of our programs and tour dates, you can sign up for our free e-newsletter by scanning the QR code or visiting our website. And with that, we also have our contact information here for questions at a later time. But with that, I'll stop sharing my screen. We can move to all be on one camera, and we can open it up for questions. Stop sharing. There we go.
All right, well, thanks, Olivia. Hello. Thank you for that presentation. That was fantastic. And I have to say, I've been privileged to go see the wallpaper, so I encourage all of you to go take a peek. It's really, really spectacular. And all of the other sites as well. We got to get out there and visit all of the Connecticut landmark sites. So did anyone have a question that they wanted to ask our team? Gregory.
At Prestwell, thank you very much. A lovely presentation. At
Thank you.
Suffield Plantation House in Virginia, they discovered that the lime plaster was burning through the wallpaper, had done tremendous damage to it over time. Now Virginia is like dropping historic buildings into a bathtub. It's very wet. So lime would be more active there, perhaps. But they felt it necessary to take the wallpapers down, line them with a protective coating on the back, and then rehang them. Why was this decision not made in your case? That's not a criticism, it's a question.
Right, thank you, Gregory. That's really neat. I have not heard of that approach. I'm curious because with such wetness, we have a couple walls at Hathaway that are just by nature, very wet because of the roof line. And I would be a little nervous of trapping moisture. I'm not sure, but that was not even brought up as a
I
possibility.
believe New England Document did the work.
Ah, okay, so they're used to wetness. A great question. It wasn't even part of what was proposed, and I'm not sure why.
Just
I mean,
curious.
yeah, they
discovered
took down the paper.
They also discovered that there was an earlier they're French papers, French scenics, and quite spectacular. One of the largest collections still in an American house, particularly after the house in Washington, D.C. was stripped of at least one of its papers. Anyway, the English paper underneath was burning through the more recent French wallpapers from the perhaps the 1830s. So they also had layers of wallpaper they had to separate to do conservation work on the scenics, which were judged to be more valuable as a preservation item, and the most recent than just the overall patterns of the pattern paper underneath. And I believe that was removed. I mean, I don't think they threw it out. But anyway, there were a number of problems that were active in those at Prestwold. It's a spectacular house. I urge you to get a chance to see it. It's in
Thank you.
southwestern Virginia, maybe
Definitely
an hour and
not.
a half from the highway.
I'll have to look it up.
Very neat. Yeah, we'll definitely look it up. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Gregory. Jenny,
Hi,
hi.
hi. I'm on the Historic District Commission in Greenwich, and we have challenges on giving applicants feedback when they're looking to do projects on their historic homes. And in particular, I just have a question because you maintain a number of historic homes with beautiful architectural elements, but sometimes you have to replace things. Like I saw the porch, it made me think of this when I saw the porch, like it's all rotted underneath. And then things like fences. So do you have an opinion on or suggestions on the direction to give applicants who want to replace a fence, who want to replace elements, again, to replace so that it looks the same, but with modern materials like AZEK and other materials, or in your opinion, and even some windows, let's say there's a missing window, let's say someone's, wanting to build a historically accurate addition. I just was curious to know if you had any thoughts on that.
So I'm actually on the Historic District Commission for West Hartford, which is where I live. And we encounter these types of issues all the time as well. From the district side of things, we don't allow modern materials pretty much at all. Sometimes if they're on the rear of the house and you can't see it from the road, we don't really have purview, but so, and just as a preservation professional, I think that using craftsmen who specialize in traditional materials, like the ones that we use for work all the time, really the quality of work is far going to exceed anything that you can get new, and especially with windows, those any kind of replacement windows that you can get aren't going to have that same seal that you're going to get with an original window that can be restored. So we really we don't recommend letting people use modern materials.
And fencing too, the same thing with fences.
Same thing with
Okay.
fences.
Yeah, I just was asking because we are in a position now, I guess since COVID, things have gone crazy in Greenwich. Even though people think of Greenwich as where, there's just a lot of wealth, the wealth that's now come into the town since COVID, and the new people that have come here and don't have any respect for history. We're trying to come up with ways to encourage people to put historic protections on houses, to save houses, to do things. So these discussions have come up. So I just thought I would ask, because they're saying, well, we want to, do these certain things. Otherwise, we're going to tear the house down. So, because these are houses that have no protection, or these are properties that people are considering. Or we also do have families who own a house and they don't have a lot of money. So they're, trying to go. And we have the same issue we have a historic district where somebody went and put up a plastic fence from Home Depot and said, oh, I didn't know and it's been really a challenge because, we're trying to enforce, but it's good to know what your opinion is on that, because there's this push to start letting people use more durable materials as a way to either save money or even in some cases less expensive, which is totally inappropriate. But thank you very much.
And Jenny, Preservation Connecticut partners with the State Historic Preservation Office to do periodic trainings with historic district commissions.
Okay.
So that's something that we could discuss with the commission and the community. So you can,
Okay.
explore that in more detail.
Wonderful. And we also have a local historic property that we just
Right.
bought last year, the house on Cary Road. And while it was being restored, they were fairly aggressive in the way that they restored it. And so the other thing, and I don't want to take up a ton of time, but I think we could use some guidance, and maybe even our Planning and Zoning Commission, who approve people who come in with historic overlay projects, which are ultimately we're an advisory board, and then they go to the Planning and Zoning Commission, who decide whether or not it qualifies. And
Mhm.
so we're kind of, it would be great to get an idea of what is considered restoration, bringing a house back from years of neglect and inappropriate additions, stuff like that, to make it still considered, an historic property. So yeah, maybe I'd love to be in touch with you about that, because we need some education down here, because it's happening. I mean, every week. Most of the houses are turn of the 20th century houses. 4 or 5 a week are just going into the dumpster. So it's that's one era of houses. We don't have a lot of older houses left. So
Sure. Yep, so that's definitely a program we can assist with.
And Jenny, this is Stacy Vero. I'm a circuit rider at Preservation Connecticut. And just as a quick thing to add, there are incentives for homeowners in local historic districts, meaning financial incentives like the historic homeowners tax credit program. So
we don't really know, right? We focus, I mean, the historic district has changed hands a lot. We still have our chair, who's been the chair for many years, but we have a lot of new people, and I think education is key, because their opinions about things, and people come from different backgrounds. I always say I'm just the crazy old house lady. I just love old houses. So I don't know.
Well, we're happy to help you. We're happy to come down and talk.
Thank you. Okay, great.
Oh, sorry. I saw a question in the chat asking about the dates for the 2 events that we put on the PowerPoint. So I just wanted to repeat that. The printmaking workshop is going to be Sunday, October 12th from 10 to noon. And then the celebrating Réveillon is going to be Sunday, November 2nd from 2 to 6. My apologies. And those are both at the Phelps-Hatheway House in Suffield.
Is there limited?
They're also on our website. Sorry.
Is there limited availability to attend? Do people have to sign up? Or will they?
People do have to sign up, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The workshop is capped at 8, and that will be with one of our conservators. And 2 to 6 has a little bit more open availability.
So
As
definitely
you
sign
came
up
last
now.
year. Thank you.
Yeah, but we highly encourage you to register just so you can secure your spot.
Yeah,
These
those
events
look
do go
wonderful.
well. Yeah.
Thank you. Did anyone else have a question for our guest today? Been really great to see all the wonderful work that you're doing at Connecticut Landmarks, and that's just a fraction of everything that you're doing.
We'd
We
be
should
sitting
have
here
these-
probably for 2.5 hours if we
Yes,
were to go through
we should
everything. So
certainly have these check-ins more often. Thank you so much for joining us today, and for the work that you do, and for being fabulous partners with us. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much for
Jenny.
having us. Like we said, your support and your guidance and all of your expertise is really so appreciated. So thanks again for having us. And thank you everyone for taking time out of your afternoon to sit and chat with us.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Have a great day.
Do I just say that?